Assalomu alaykum hurmatli do'stlar. Sizlarga va'da qilganimdek, bugun biz Oxford universitetida, Buyuk Britaniyadamiz, Angliyada. Va bundan oldin men anons qilgandim, ya'ni O'zbekistonlik yigit-qizlarimiz magistraturada, aynan Amerika va Angliya universitetlarida aynan magistraturaga o'qimoqchi bo'lishsa, mana shu oliygohlarga kirishmoqchi bo'lishsa, shu ikkita davlatda qanaqa savollar bor? Va juda ham ko'plab savollar oldik. Men eng qiziqarlilarini tanlab oldim va hammasini hozir Benga beraman. Ben o'z vaqtida mana shu yerda Oxford universitetini tugatgan talabalardan biri. Endi o'sha savollarning ichida bir juda qiziqarli savol qabul qildim. Ya'ni men Angliya yoki Amerika universitetlarida o'qimoqchiman, lekin ingliz tilini bilmayman. Ingliz tilini bilishim shartmi yoki yo'qmi? Iltimos do'stlar, bunaqa savollarni sal yoroq qo'yaylik. Shuning uchun ham mana shu insonga rahmat. Bugungi intervyuni biz to'liq ingliz tilida o'tkazamiz. Agar sizlar magistraturada o'qimoqchi bo'lsanglar, Amerika yoki Angliya universitetida, demak ingliz tilini mana shundoq o'zbek tili, rus tilini bilganini bilishingiz shart. Shuning uchun agar kimdir ingliz tilini bilmasa, lekin magistraturalarda o'qimoqchi bo'lsa, Amerika va Angliyada, undan ko'ra bu intervyuni umuman tomosha qilmanglar. Lekin haqiqatan ham Amerika, Angliya universitetlarida magistraturada o'qimoqchi bo'lgan yigit-qizlarimiz ingliz tilini bilib bo'lgan bo'lishlari kerak. Va shuning uchun mana shu intervyu ularga qiziqarli bo'ladi degan umiddaman. Biz esa boshlaymiz. Hi Ben, good morning. How are you?
Hi Otabek. Thank you for being here. Very lovely to see you.
It's my great pleasure to be here in Oxford University, and thank you very much for invitation.
My absolute pleasure, my friend. It's good to see you too.
Thank you. Ben, I already told to my friends that we're friends, and you graduated this excellent university. But could you please tell us about yourself a little bit more?
Of course. So, as Otabek just said, I'm a graduate of Oxford University. I studied philosophy, politics, and economics, and I was very lucky to have the privilege of studying here. And whilst I was here, I actually represented the university in two different aspects. One was in swimming, so I represented my country, Hong Kong, in swimming, and then I represented the university in competitions here. And then I also represented Oxford in debating as well, so where you have public speaking and arguments and stuff like that. Great privilege, and I had the most wonderful time here. And since then, I now work with Sunny from the previous video.
Yes. It was about a bachelor degree.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Now we'd like to talking about a master degree. Yeah.
Yes. So now we're both experts in the education space, and today
Yes.
I'm very, very happy to share some of our insights and experience with regards to the application process for postgraduate degrees.
Like Mark Zuckerberg once said, sharing is caring. Yeah?
Absolutely.
And that's a very excellent room. Could you tell us what kind of room is that? The atmosphere here is so amazing.
Yeah, so actually today we're very, very lucky to be having this interview in the Morris Room of the Oxford Union Society. The Society is one of the world's oldest debating societies, and so many of Britain's prominent figures, ranging from William Gladstone back in the day, a Prime Minister in the 19th
Yes.
century, all the way up to the current Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson. All of them have been members and or indeed former presidents of society. And so it's a very hallowed institution, it's a beautiful setting, and I can't think of a more appropriate place to be doing this interview today, to introduce people to the wonderful world of Oxford.
When I lived in London, I met one time Boris Johnson when he was the mayor of London. That was a very interesting meeting.
I'm sure it was,
Yeah. So the next question. So postgraduate degrees in the UK,
Yes.
such as Oxford University, or in the USA like Harvard University. Can you tell us more about them following from Sunny's discussion about undergraduate degrees? Because we've been talking about this topic with Sunny, but it was concerning bachelor's degree.
Absolutely. But I think in order to help us refine the discussion a little bit more, we can't just take a look at postgraduate degrees as a block.
Yeah.
Let's try to break it down into separate categories. So are we talking about master's programs or in the UK, masters in the US, or PhDs in the UK or PhDs in the US? So out of these four categories,
Okay.
what
So shall we discuss master's programs in the UK? Yes, and
Sure.
then the next one. Yeah.
Absolutely, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So with regards to master's programs in the UK, the first and most important thing that everyone has to realize is that they're academically focused.
Okay.
So it's not like, an undergraduate degree, as I'm sure Sunny has said, where sometimes extracurriculars and things like that can come into play. No, it's much more academically focused, and the main requirements are that you're going to need good grades for your bachelor's and undergraduate degree, you're going to need good references, and in certain cases you're going to need some forms of standardized testing, such as the GMAT and the GRE. And in the UK specifically, I think it's very useful to break down master's programs into 3 subcategories. The first one is going to be a taught master's, and they're usually very short. They're 1 year long, and by taught it means that the majority of the course, you attend lectures. It's a bit like an undergraduate degree. You get assigned essays and stuff, and then you just have to do the research, or you have to go to a lab if it's a master's in science, and then you have to do a short thesis at the end of it, but you'll guide it through the process. That's a taught master's. The second type of master's is what we know as a research master's. So they're usually things like MPhils, which is the title you get after it, or MSCs in the case of sciences. And for those, they, as the name suggests, involve an element of research. And so they're usually longer, so 2 years or even more in some specific cases. And it'll be a combination of being taught and going to lectures and guided through the process, but then most students need to, come up with a research proposal, and then they're going to have to do their research and, produce a dissertation or a thesis by themselves, which will subsequently be handed in. And that's why the program is called a research master's and will be a little bit longer. Now, the third kind of master's is kind of like a professional or an executive master's. And these are, things like MBA programs or Masters of Public Policy, where, if I may say so, perhaps it's not quite as academically rigorous. I'm sure a lot of people probably disagree, but in many ways it's for people who, want to further the next stage of their careers, or are a good kind of grounding in public policy, as in the case of an MPP program, which will allow them to pursue better, roles in government. And they're more for executives or professionals who have already had extensive experience inside the workspace. So those are the 3 main types of master's degrees that we find in the UK.
Very comprehensive breakdown.
Thank you.
So how does this differ to the USC?
Well, to be perfectly honest, in terms of the breakdown of the 3 different kinds of categories that we find, they're quite largely the same in the US as well, because you do have a wide range of different types of masters. And of course you have the MBAs for executive programs, you've got taught masters in anything ranging from English literature or film studies, for example, and you have your research masters in the sciences or in philosophy and politics and stuff like that. However, there are a few main differences, and we have to take a look at them from this way. So firstly, in the USA, there are some degrees that you can only study as a postgraduate degree, okay? Mm-hmm. So in the UK, for example, you can study medicine or you can study law as an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's. However, that's not possible in the US. So you can only study law and you can only study medicine as a postgraduate degree in the US. So that's a first and very important distinction.
Is that advantage or disadvantage, what do you think?
It depends. It depends on the person. Because if you really know as a child that you really want to be a doctor, or you really, really know that you want to be a lawyer, for example, then I think it's good in the UK that you can study.
It's unpredictable because you can change your attitudes about your own career.
Exactly.
Like myself, I was a lawyer, then I became a journalist, and then I became a film actor. What should I do?
Well, this is the advantage of the American system, because on the flip side,
that's why I live here. I live there.
No, on the flip side, after you've done your 4 years of undergraduate at the US, and then you have more maturity, you have more life experience to be able to make an informed decision about whether you actually want to become a lawyer and whether you want to become a doctor.
Okay.
But the process takes longer there. So that's the first difference for master's programs in the US. The second main difference is the fact that you're going to need standardized testing. And what I mean by standardized testing are things such as the GMAT or the GRE and their specific subject tests. And this is really, really important because the overwhelming majority of USA postgraduate programs, both masters and PhDs, will need standardized testing. Whereas in the UK, importantly, not all of the programs need them. It helps still, but sometimes it's not compulsory.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about the admissions process for master's programs then?
Perfect. So, as I said before, right from the start, it's a very different game opposed to a bachelor's or an undergraduate degree. It's primarily academically focused. So the first and the most important thing is to make sure that you have good grades. Your undergraduate degree, your bachelor's degree needs to be at the top. You need to be getting good results, because then it justifies the fact that you're capable of further study beyond your bachelor's degree. So that's rule number one.
Mm-hmm.
The second rule is to take a look at the requirements of the specific university that you're looking for. And as I said, in the UK, maybe you won't need standardized testing. In the US, you most certainly will need standardized testing. So take a look at the formal requirements for the GRE and or the GMAT, depending on the kind of degree that you're applying for.
Mm-hmm.
And
then the requirements, I have another question, okay?
Yes, but we can come back to that in a second. So first is grades, second is standardized testing. Thirdly, you're going to need to have what we call a statement of purpose or a personal statement. And this basically is a short essay which explains why you want to apply and what your qualifications are. And I think we should touch upon this specifically.
How many words?
To be honest, it depends, depending on the university.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just a couple hundred words, 500. Sometimes it's 1,500. It really depends depending on the program. So there's no generalization that I can make in this process. But statement of purpose is definitely one of those things that you're going to need. The fourth thing is you're going to need, if you're an international student, and I imagine if you're coming from Uzbekistan.
I was thinking concerning Uzbekistan students.
Yes, of course. If you're coming from Uzbekistan, you will need to prove that you have a good background in English. And so you're going to need to take the IELTS for the UK or TOEFL or both in certain circumstances.
Overall, the score should be at least 7 or 7
At least
plus.
a 7 plus no less than 6.5 in each individual section.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. But obviously, as I say, you should aim higher. Have an 8, that will help you a lot, because it shows and proves to the university that you will be coming to the US or the UK and you'll be capable of integrating and communicating with your fellow students. So very, very important. Finally, you're going to need a CV. And to be honest, a good CV is useful regardless of whether you apply for university or whether you apply for a job. But format it properly, don't be lazy, make sure that it's properly sorted out. And I think those are usually the formal requirements required for entry into a master's program.
There are some requirements, and could you please tell us some moments concerning general strategies?
Absolutely. So I always think that in terms of general strategies, right, you need to make sure that, firstly, you prepare on time. You really need to make sure that you give yourself enough time to either prepare your statement of purpose or prepare for your standardized testing, because let's face it, it's not particularly easy in many circumstances if you're trying to take these exams. And one thing that I think is often overlooked and left to the last minute is to do with referees. So everyone, no matter if you're applying for, or even undergraduate degrees, but most certainly in the case of postgraduate degrees, masters and PhDs, you will need to provide academic references, either 2 or 3 depending on the program that you're applying for. Make sure that you talk to your teachers, make sure you talk to the people who will be writing your reference beforehand to make sure that they're A, happy to do it for you, don't just assume that they will write these references for you, and B, give them enough information so that they can really write something good about you rather than just something generic or
he was a good boy. Yeah,
exactly. You get exactly what I mean.
Okay, and can you expand on the statement of purpose?
Of course. And I think this is a very, very important question. It's one specific aspect that can really derail or make or break, I like to use the phrase, someone's application. So a statement of purpose is not to say, hi, my name is Ben, I want to study electrical engineering, or I want to study physics. That's not how it works. You have to write with specificity is the key word. And what this means is that you have to be very, very specific in highlighting 2 things. One, your passion for the degree, why you genuinely are interested to the extent that you want to continue your studies in this area. Your passion, and secondly, your qualifications. So you need to be able to tell people that you have the necessary qualifications through your undergraduate, as well as your other experiences, maybe in work or research, or if you've been published in a publication, all these kinds of things. So it's not just hi, I want to do this, but it's I want to do this because I am so passionate about it for these reasons, maybe a personal story, maybe you're genuinely fascinated by the potential of this subject, and then you have to say, and I'm also good enough, I believe that I deserve a place at this university because of my achievements. I did this in my undergraduate degree, I've done this research with this professor, I've done this, which got myself published in this journal.
So I understood, it shouldn't be so primitive argument, it should be very sophisticated one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of people make the mistake in believing that a statement of purpose or a personal statement is just tell the university about yourself. No. Well, it is in a way, but in a very, very specific way, coming back to that.
Sometimes it doesn't work, yeah. Okay. So we've been talking about the references and CV. Could you please tell us a little bit more about that? Because it is crucial, I think.
Absolutely. So, as I said, the personal statement or the statement of purpose has to talk about your achievements and your qualifications. Coming to the reference, it is really important that what you say in your statement is backed up by your referee. They need to be in a position to say, yes, Otabek did this. It's true, and I can verify that when he says that he engaged in this activity, it's correct. That he did this research, it's correct. So first thing is verification. Because
like Ronald Reagan once said, an American president trusts but verify. Mikhail Gorbachev.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So, you need to be able to verify, because otherwise I could just say that I won the Nobel Peace Prize. Obviously, I haven't won the Nobel Peace Prize, but
sure.
You can just make things
up.
Yeah. Exactly. So verification is the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing actually is even more important, arguably, and it's for your referee to talk about your potential. Because universities, when they're accepting people for postgraduate degrees, are looking for the people who can go beyond what they've already learned. So it's about being able to properly handle the rigor of postgraduate education. And that's really important to highlight the potential so that you're good, but you can be stretched even further, and that you will benefit from actually being admitted onto a master's program. So that's point 2, potential. Point 3 is to talk about your personality and the things that you can't necessarily show in your personal statement. So beyond verification of qualification and potential, they should be talking about how nice you are. Will you fit into the student atmosphere? Will you contribute? Are you a good boy or a good girl, for example? Not as simple as that, but it's about showing light on your character, showing light on, anecdotes, for example, about their interactions with you in the classroom and how you've been able to contribute.
Yes. Anecdotes in Russian and Uzbek language, it means some jokes, but in English, it has another opinion. Yes, it's just some life story, yeah?
Yeah, life stories, but to be honest, jokes, it's not the usual way of going about it, but it's I'm not going to say that you can't make a joke, because if there genuinely has been a funny situation where, your referee and yourself have been involved together, and it demonstrates something positive, this is the most important thing, any story can be good if it shows a positive meaning, and it casts you in a good light. So those are the 3 things that a reference needs to do. It needs to back you up on what you said. It needs to, talk about your potential in the subject specifically. And then it also needs to talk about your character and make you sound like you're a good guy.
Yeah. And Ben, could you please give me a favor between us and the camera? Could you please tell us some more tips for our students in Uzbekistan?
Well, absolutely. But you keep this between us, okay?
Yeah, between us and camera, I told you. Yeah.
So, I think, the first and most important tip, really, is get your application organized on time. This is common sense, but you would be surprised how many people leave it to the last moment, or how many people don't look formally at the application requirements. Sometimes, for example, let's take the computational and quantitative finance program in Oxford University, there is a very extensive mathematical problem sheet that every single applicant needs to fill out and complete, and so they have to upload it to their application. You can't do this within a day if you leave it to the last minute.
Sure.
So tip number one, give yourself enough time. Look through the requirements, make sure that you know exactly what you're doing. Tip two, you may not like your referees. It really helps if you do. It really helps if they like you as well, even more importantly. So as a general strategy, try to be a good student. Try to make it very clear that you are passionate about your subject, that you're willing to contribute in your class, and that they can truthfully write a good reference for you. Thirdly, obviously have a very good CV and put a lot of effort in your statement of purpose. But I don't really think that these are the tips that you're looking for, guys, actually, to be perfectly honest. This is common sense, very, very important common sense, and I need to say it anyway, just in case. I think,
specifically.
Yeah, so let's kind of move on to what I call application boosters, things that make you more compelling as a candidate. Because when you're applying, you can fulfill all the requirements and you can do it well, but that doesn't necessarily make you stand out. It doesn't necessarily make you different. It doesn't necessarily mean automatically 100% that the university is going to take you, especially if you're applying to Stanford. I know someone inquired about Stanford earlier, or Harvard, or MIT, Cambridge, Oxford. Some of these are the most impressive and amazing universities in the world. Everyone wants to go there.
And also from Ivy League.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone wants to go there.
Sure.
And you have immense competition. So how do you stand out from the crowd? And I say that there are 2 or 3 really good ways that you can do it. So firstly, in your specific field, if you're doing physics, for example, try to do some research beyond what you're already studying at school. Try to work in a good group, maybe get published in a journal, and the same applies for every single subject, in philosophy, in biochemistry, in history, in music even, go and perform. Like, do things specifically related to your subject, especially to get published, and also, things which can demonstrate your ability and your initiative and your passion for it. So that's number one. Do interesting things within your subject. And, I'm very happy for you guys to ask and follow up if you want any specific tips and advice as to how you, push yourself within your specific subject. The second thing is beyond, stuff related to your subject is work experience. Work experience can, even though it may not be specifically related to your subject, it does help, because if you can get good work experience, you can get an additional reference, for example, or it just shows that you're a responsible, qualified person who is competent and capable of handling real life, essentially, which is much more of what a postgraduate student's life will be like.
It is crucial, I think, because I know that German philosopher Goethe once said that the most important part of the truth is experience.
Absolutely.
That's why I think for the universities it's one of the most important requirements.
Absolutely. So, for example, even if you're looking to study something completely separate, like theology, for example, but you have
like Shelley.
Yes, exactly. But let's say you want to study theology and religion, but you have had work experience in big companies such as Goldman Sachs or McKinsey and places like this. These firms themselves act as independent verification that you are competent, that you are a good guy.
Okay.
And that you have also taken the specific decision to leave work because you genuinely think that pursuing a postgraduate degree is a better option for you. So this is a very, very good tip. Have good work experience. Don't waste your time, especially during undergraduate degree program time. Do research, get published, or get good work experience. Okay. 2 very important tips. Don't waste your time. The third thing, obviously, is languages. If you speak multiple languages, that don't underestimate.
Like you speak Chinese.
Yes, I speak Chinese as well, in both Cantonese and Mandarin. But don't underestimate the power and the usefulness, utility of knowing a couple of languages. So if you do, make sure that you draw attention to them, because it's actually very, very impressive. Not that many people in the world speak 2 or 3 languages. Yeah. So definitely draw attention to that if you do.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the required preparation. Yes, before. What do you mean? Could you please tell us something more about that?
So required preparation is very simple. I think I've already touched upon most of this as well, actually. But I basically, going back to my general tips, it's, get your standardized testing out of the way, get your references sorted out, get your statement of purpose properly written and checked. If, as I said, for the computational and financial program in Oxford, you need to do a problem sheet, or if you need to submit a formal research proposal, which is longer than the statement of purpose, get them done.
Okay.
I mean, in summary, to be honest, rule 1 is make sure you read the exact requirements of the program you're applying for. Get all of them out of the way. And then secondly, if you do have spare time, try to boost your application, make yourself more compelling by doing work, by doing research, by getting yourself published, and focus on your languages.
So we've been talking about application boosters, yeah? So something more about that. What we need for that?
Well, I think, as I already mentioned, it's very, very important to do research and things like this. I think this really covers application boosters already, to be honest. These are my main tips.
Okay, so any final tips for master's programs?
To be honest, I think the one final thing that I would say is you need to have passion.
Okay.
You really need to want to do a master's, because if you did not enjoy your undergraduate program, you're definitely not going to enjoy doing a master's. So you need to make sure that you're applying for the right reasons. And I cannot stress enough how important this is.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to talking about PhD programs. Because how do they differ from master's one?
So I think the immediate point that I made just now, that passion, is even more important when it comes to a PhD program. If you're applying to a PhD program in the UK, it's going to be 4 to 5 years. In the USA, it's probably 5 to 7 years.
Yes.
So you really need to make sure that you love your degree. You absolutely need to know 100% that you love your degree. And I think that's the first difference. At the end of the day, a master's program is 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 years in America. You can get over it. You can deal with it, right? Especially given the fact that a lot of it is going to be taught. For a PhD, you're on your own. Primarily, it's going to be you trying to push the boundaries of knowledge within your subject. It's a very lonely experience a lot of the time. So this is the main difference between a PhD and a master's program.
Okay. It was really exciting and interesting, thank you very much. And so let's start by breaking down the differences between UK and USA PhD programs, please.
Yeah, so as I said, firstly, the length of PhD programs, well, they vary depending on how quickly you can finish your PhD, but in general, programs in the USA are longer. The reason why is because in the UK, a lot of PhD programs are entirely just about your research and your focus. There may be a couple of required like maths programs and whatnot in the sciences at the start of your PhD program, but it's primarily either you're in the lab, doing your experiments and doing your own thing, occasionally being checked on by your supervisor, or you're in the library. If you're doing a humanities degree, you're just reading and you're just on the laptop, you're smashing out your thesis. You will need to go to some research seminars, but possibly to present papers that you've co-authored or authored yourself, but you're mostly on your own.
Yeah.
What happens is, after you apply for a PhD, if you get accepted, you're probably for about 1.5 years on kind of like a probationary period, and then after you get to a certain point, you have to go to what's known as a transfer. So that's where you sit around in a room and you've got a couple of your subject experts, supervisors, etc., asking you questions about the state of your thesis. If you can successfully defend it, then you pass your transfer, then you get to your proper PhD candidate status, and then after that, you submit your thesis, and then after the university has had the opportunity to properly assess it, then you have to pass what's known as your viva, which is the formal verbal defense of your thesis according to a panel of experts. And if you do that, then congratulations, you have your PhD, you can become Dr. Otabek Mahkamov.
It was the famous sign of David Bowie, we can be hero, yeah? He became a doctor, yeah?
Absolutely.
And we got this degree.
It's a high honor. It's a high honor. It's tough, as I say. But that's kind of like the UK process.
What about the USA?
The USA is arguably tends to be even longer, because the US has, and even some of the top universities, has holistic requirements. So sometimes there are, and what I mean by this is in two ways. One is academic holistic requirements, and two, just kind of compulsory requirements of the program. And I'll explain this in a sec. By academic holistic requirements, I mean that even if you're studying physics, for example, as your PhD, a lot of the universities will require you to take some basic courses in philosophy, history. You're going to have to do a basic kind of liberal arts base before you can fully focus on the exact area of research that you want to do. So as a result of that, that takes a little bit more time, and it could be annoying, but it could also be very fascinating for people. The second thing is that a lot of the times PhD researchers in the US, it's compulsory for them to do lectures or do some teaching assistant work or lab assistant work and stuff like that. Now, again, yes, it's good because a lot of people can earn some money off of this, but it also eats into your time because it's not usually compulsory to do that in the UK. You can do that if you want to.
Yeah.
But otherwise, to be honest, the process is fairly similar. It's just that the US tends to take a little bit longer. There'll be a little bit more interaction. You probably have to read around a little bit more as well.
Okay, and how about tips?
Tips, to be perfectly honest, it's very much the same as your master's program. So I'm going to break it down into strategies again, and general requirements, and boosters, just as I did for master's programs. General strategies, again, you probably will need standardized testing. If you're looking at the US, get it done. PhD programs definitely require a much more precise and a much more longer personal statement or research proposal. Sometimes, if I remember correctly, and I might be wrong, for example, if you want to do the PhD in philosophy at Harvard, you actually need to present a research proposal which is 40 pages long. So that's in itself, it's a very significant piece of work. So again, don't leave it to the last moment. Make sure that you actually put a lot of your time and effort into doing it properly.
Do everything in time.
And again, do everything in time, do everything well. So in terms of general strategies, that's that basically. In terms of application boosters, again, the same things apply. If you have already, even before a PhD program, had the opportunity to do research, that's brilliant. If you have the opportunity even to publish in a well-respected journal, you don't have to be the author, you can be a co-author or a contributor. That's already amazing because not many people either have the initiative to do that or have the opportunity to do that. Languages always help.
Sure.
Make sure you have extra references if you can submit them in a relevant way. Have good work experiences. All of the same things apply.
About it, So let's invent a hypothetical scenario.
Sure.
Okay. For example, I am a student from Uzbekistan and have graduated in physics at X university. Yeah. And I want to study at MIT. What should I do? Okay.
So obviously MIT is very competitive. So I assume that he's graduated from Tashkent.
Sure.
And I'm also going to assume that he has good grades. Okay, good grades. So what you need to do is you need to take your standardized testing. You're going to need to take either GMAT or the GRE. You're probably going to need to take subject-specific GREs as well. And obviously prepare and do extremely well in them. That's rule number one. It makes a huge difference. Secondly, you need to make sure that your personal statement is written very, very clearly and concisely. Obviously, as I said, your passion for the subject and also why you're qualified to be able to do this. I think if you have time as well as a student, obviously during your undergraduate and bachelor's, try to make sure that you have the chance to do research. And if you're applying for physics, it won't just be physics. There's going to be astrophysics, it's going to be, you know, matter or material science, it's going to be, you know, a subsection of physics. And when you talk about it in your statement, you're going to have to specify this as well and make sure, if possible, that you have had the opportunity to do some research. The second thing, the third thing actually, is, and this is a tip, this is a pro tip actually that I haven't mentioned before. Oftentimes there's a little bit of confusion or mistrust about a qualification from Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan or wherever. So it's very, very good if you have the opportunity to do something in the West. This can take the form of two things. Either you have work experience in the West, or you have research opportunities and exposure in the West where you can maybe, you know, if you have the chance to travel to a lab somewhere in Cambridge, for example, and do like 2 or 3 weeks and get attached there, that proves that in a Western institution, you know, they've recognized your talents and your ability to do things, and, you know, they're willing to back you up. So this is very, very important. Get an international qualification from somewhere that they would recognize as well. Even if you don't go and do research experiences, for example, or work experiences, a good way of being able to get international qualifications is through the online platforms, such as the EDX. And if you take a look at EDX online, you'll see a lot of programs such as, you know, Harvard University, for example, has their Introduction to Computer Science, CS50, which is online, and you can take it anytime at your own pace, and then you can even apply for a verified certificate. And so that's a good way of having a certificate which shows, I did Harvard's course, I did it myself, I verified it, you know, I can handle you know, an undergraduate course from Harvard, and I've done it. And this, again, you know, you can put it on your CV as a transferable qualification that people can recognize, and this helps to further boost yourself as well. So this is, you know, a very, very good way if you're applying from a country which is they're not so familiar with, a good way of being like, you know, I've got good grades within my country, but even in the West, I can hold up to your standards as well. But, you know, to recap, because I've said a lot, make sure you get everything out of the way quickly. You know, have a good statement of purpose, get your referees done, get your GMAT or the GRE and your standardized testing done, and make sure that, you know, if you can, get research or work experience or international qualifications which are transferable.
Ben, you know, we've had a lot of questions from my followers, and, you know, it was a very famous proverb in Latin, vox populi, you know, which means the voice of people, voice of God. That's why we can't ignore them. That's why I've got a lot of questions about scholarships programs.
Of course, yes.
That's, because Sunny already mentioned that in the UK it is so difficult to do it. He said no money in the UK, but in the USA we can do it. Could you please tell us about this one, because we need to know about some scholarship programs and about some sponsorship for the studies.
Yes. So, unfortunately, bad news. There is the opportunity to apply for funding in both the UK and the US, but it's very difficult to get that for master's students, first of all. Especially if you're an international student from a place like Uzbekistan who wants to apply to UK, US. It's very difficult. Sometimes, and there's no generalization here, sometimes there are certain schools which have specific programs or endowments which provide scholarships for students coming from abroad. But 100% you can find sponsorship. It doesn't work like that. For example, in Oxford University, there is a specific scholarship called the Quark Scholarship for students from China to study one specific program, which is the Master of Public Policy in the Blavatnik School of Government. So that's a very, very specific circumstance of money being available for students coming from a certain area for a certain university in a certain program. These exist, but I'm afraid you're going to have to do research, or again, you know, if you have specific questions about what university you want, what kind of programs you want to do, ask me, ask Otabek, get in touch. I think that's the most important.
And about this one, you have your own company, other than Jain.
Yes,
you
of course.
can help to our Uzbekistan students as well to get all the documents, yes, and give some real tips. And as you mentioned before, can we, write it down, all the information about your organization and some context information below this video?
Absolutely, yeah. No, guys, check out the information below, and my contact will be there.
I'll give you a corporate email address.
Absolutely,
okay?
Absolutely, no
okay,
problem.
All your phones, number, can I give it?
Absolutely, just WhatsApp me, email me. Very happy to answer any and all questions. I'll try my best to get back to you guys.
And your company also can help them, yeah?
Of course, yeah.
If possible, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was so interesting, very effective, very productive, and so informative interview. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
I've heard that Margaret Thatcher studied here in Oxford University.
She did. She did her dissertation on ice cream,
yeah.
actually, funnily enough.
And I read her book, one of the last one. It was the Statecraft Strategy for the Changing World. And the last, sentences of this book was like that. The main problem in this life, when you have a lot of free time and haven't got any kind of ideas for what and for whom you can use it. Dear Ben, I wish to you very interesting, very intense, and very extraordinary life. And thank you very much for your time and about all your patience.
No worries, Otabek. And finally, guys, I will be traveling to Uzbekistan in late February, early March. I really hope to see you there. I'll be in touch. Take care, guys. Spasiba.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. And katta rahmat sizga, hurmatli do'stlar. Intervyuni eshitdinglar. Agarda demak qanaqa savollar bo'lsa, Benni o'zini ham kompaniyasi bor. Mana shu aynan kandidatlarga har qanday o'sha Amerika va Angliya universitetlariga hujjatlar topshirish uchun demak yordam berish bo'yicha mana Bendan ruxsat oldim. Uni pochtasini, uni adreslarini qolaversa, WhatsAppdagi telefon raqamlarini ushbu videodagida qoldiraman. Qanaqa savollar bo'lsa, qo'shimcha, qanaqa iltimoslar bo'lsa va agarda kimdadir Ben kompaniyasini demak yordamdan foydalangingiz kelsa, demak bemalol ularga to'g'ridan to'g'ri murojaat qilishinglar mumkin. Men o'ylaymanki, shu video sizlarga yoqdi. Iltimos sizlardan bitta like aylansin va Mr. Otabek TV kanaliga albatta obuna bo'lisizlar degan umiddaman va xudo xolisa kelajakda mana shu yerda Oxford universitetida ko'rishganda ko'rishguncha. Thank you very much.
Thank you.